Hey y'all, this is the week 3 recap, and we had a lot going on in this week. We start off on day 15. Um, we know that Joseph can interpretate dreams. This is what got him sold into slavery in the first place because of the dreams that he told his brothers. But now we see that Joseph is in prison. He's with a baker and a butler, interpretates their dream correctly. Now we move forward. Pharaoh starts to have dreams, and he has collected all the magicians around Egypt and the elders and wise men. No one can tell him what those dreams mean. But the baker this remembered him. Remember at the end of chapter 40, the baker did not remember Joseph. But now he's telling Pharaoh, hey, there's a guy in prison who interpreted my dreams. So Genesis 41 and 2, suddenly there came out of the river 7 cows, fine looking and fat, and they fed in a meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate the 7 fine looking fat cows, so Pharaoh awoke. That was his dream, and Joseph interpreted it as 7 years of harvest and 7 years of famine. And because he can interpret those dreams, Pharaoh decided that Joseph was going to be in charge of the famine. And everyone had to answer to Joseph that wasn't Pharaoh. Because of this famine in day 16, we see that his brothers end up coming to Egypt to get grain. And this is the first time they didn't bring Benjamin with them, but the second time they did. Now, the first time Joseph didn't reveal himself to his brothers, but soon on the second time he did. Their brothers was obviously bowing down and fearful, but Joseph said, hey, all is forgiven. I'm here now. Day 17, Joseph's family moved to Egypt as Pharaoh gives his family land. And Pharaoh also gives them help on the journey, like chariots and more horses. And on this journey, God spoke to Jacob to tell him not to fear on this journey. And the family ended up settling in Goshen. And on day 18, we find out that Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years. Jacob lived a total of 147 years. And before he died, he blessed his son, Reuben, Simon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Naphtali, Joseph, Benjamin, and Asher. And that is the 12 tribes of Israel. And that ended our journey through Genesis. And I just want to point out how Joseph, being in the position that he was in, ultimately saved not just people in Egypt, but also saved his brothers and saved many nations, because these are the 12 tribes of Israel. Day 19, we switched over to the book of Job, and this is where we find out about the blameless man. Job 1:1 said there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, that he was blameless and upright and feared God and shunned evil. Now Job had a lot of possessions: 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, a very big household. And I kind of feel like Satan decided that he was going to put him to the test, but God said, "I know this man." And I find that once God said, "I know this man," Job 1 and 10. This is what Satan says to God: "You have a hedge around him." Right there. I think when you are walking upright with God, you are doing your best to not allow sin into your life. There's a level of protection that comes around you. God says, Job 1 and 8, have you considered my servant Job? There was none like him on earth. All of the earth, there was none like him. A blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil. For that, Satan says you made a hedge of protection. You made a hedge around him, around his household, around all that he has on every side. He's protected on every side. He's like, you got him protected. You have blessed his work of his hands. His possessions have increased in the land. But now you stretch out your hands and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. Basically saying to God, if you take all this off of him, he's gonna curse you. And God said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person. And we see in the first chapter of Job, he loses everything. He loses his property, he loses his sons, he loses everything. And then we go to chapter 2. And this is when Satan attacks his health. First he attacked his possessions. Then first he attacked his kids and his possessions, but then he attacked his health. And God tells him again, have you considered my servant Job? This is Job 2 and 3. There is none like him on the earth, blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil, and still holds fast to his integrity, although you incite me against him to destroy him without cause. God telling him, you ain't got a reason to destroy him. You just want to do it. And I think this is what, when we talk about Satan and we call him the accused, he wants to accuse us in front of the sight of God, for God to change his opinion on us, because Satan hates us so much. And on Job 2 and 6, he says, behold, he is in your hands, but you have to spare his life. And so this is on Job 2 and 9. Satan gives him boils all over his body. And I recently had surgery back in October. I had one little boil. That was painful. A boil that's all over your body. That's So Job's wife said in Job 2 and 9 says, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. And I love this about Job 2 and 9. Job says, behold, but he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speak. Shall we indeed accept good from God? And shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. We're gonna find out that there is power in your tongue, in the word that you speak. But to be in this position where you have lost everything, your kids, your property, and now your health is fading, and you didn't. It's not that you didn't curse God, you didn't sin with your lips. And how often, even as believers, do we sin with our lips on a daily basis? In day 20 and 21, these are Job's friends who have come to him, who have said, hey, you might have did something wrong. You need to repent. You need to change. All his friends believe that he sinned, and they believe that he's being chastised by God. And this is something on day 21, the power of God. Job realizes there is no mediator between him and God. There is no one who can come between. There is no one who can go to God and correct this but him. Because God is the I am that I am, and he's everything that we need. We're at day 21 of reading the Bible, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I feel like when first of all, I think that if we don't sin, well, if we don't knowingly sin, if we practice living righteously, I believe that there is a hedge of protection that God's going to put around us. But when we do sin, I do think that this is one of the things where Satan is making a bet because he hates us so much. He's accused. We call him the accuser, because he accuses us with hard times and trials and tribulations. Sometimes I don't believe that's all on Satan. Sometimes we are the product of our own decisions. But Job is talking for me about what faith is. When everything's lost, when I had it all, I praised him. And the enemy is banking on the fact that I can take it all and he won't. And Job is standing steadfast to it. But we were going to continue plugging away. We're going to be in Job for a good minute. And if anybody has read this book, that we're going to, at the end, Job's going to get the victory, but we're going to keep plugging away. This was the week 3 recap. I'm your host, Terrence. Stay blessed, and we will see you tomorrow.